Good evening, everybody. Jack O'Malley with you on a Friday, and it has been a crazy week with the election and, of course, all that's been going on. So I want to update you on things that are happening, and I've got a lot to go through here tonight. So bear with me. Let me start by saying I understand that people are emotional, and I get why. I really do. And I've read the emails, we've listened to the voicemails and the Facebook posts, and I get it. People aren't happy. But first and foremost, I think you need to know that there are certain things that a legislature can do and things that a legislature can't do. And there are certain things that, and I'm going to get to these things, but I want you to know there are certain things that our national pundits say that aren't necessarily 100% true. Okay? So I've seen this time and time again in my 2 years in office. Somebody has their nugget of truth, something that they want to fight about or something they want to argue about, and in their heart of hearts, they know they're right, even though they're not completely right. And that's where we're at with this. My intention and my hope, and I can tell you the state legislature's hope, is that we have a fair election, that all legal votes are counted, and that no one is disenfranchised. And another thing about elections that I think you need to realize are, in any election, whether it be just a local election or a statewide election, no matter what the election is, somewhere in the state, there is an irregularity. Something happens. But in the average election, nobody pays attention because nobody really cares. Now, the people who are involved care, but I'm talking about the general public. The news doesn't. Such and such township today had a little bit of a problem during their school board election, and it doesn't happen. But you get to a presidential election, and obviously everybody's paying attention. So now, any irregularity, we've got a problem over here, this could be fraud. It might be, but it might not be. But every hiccup, everybody, fraud! They're criminals. No. For example, it's my observation, my thought process. If you've probably heard about the Antrim County issue. Now, I'm not a technical person, so this is how I describe it. All the machines got their little chip, calculate everything, so the clerk goes around and collects them all, however many precincts there are, I don't know. Takes his 20 precincts, and he goes and he puts it into the computer that feeds it to the Secretary of State. And for whatever reason, it flipped them. So 60% of the vote went to the Democrats, 40% to the Republicans, and everybody went, Antrim County became a Democratic county? What happened there? Well, what happened? Was it fraud? Was it evil? It was a screw up, and it appears to be a software glitch. Now, we can assume that, or we can assume that it was obviously a Russian plot. You know what I'm saying here? But what happened? Everybody went, that isn't how the county normally votes. There's a problem here. So the clerk, who I don't know who it is, said, what? And they checked it. They changed things once they realized there was a problem, and they corrected it. Now, out of that issue, I'm hearing, wait, there's 47 other counties in the state that use the software. Maybe they're all having the same problem. Or maybe they're not. Now, think about this. Everybody has a feel for how their county goes, right? And if you see a major issue like that, somebody's going to squawk. So I guess my point is, could the 47 other counties or whatever the number is be having a similar problem? Yeah, I guess it is. But what's the likelihood of that? Even if it was a portion, don't you think people would be screaming, wait a minute? So let's use some common sense. And that was one of those issues that if this was not the presidential election and this happened, nobody'd know. It wouldn't make the national news, right? So let's keep this in perspective. Now, already, I haven't seen the messages here, but somebody already here has probably said, Jack, you're a lazy lout. You don't care about this country. The Republican legislature, is sleeping on the job. Well, I'm going to tell you that's not the case. So I'm going to go through some things here that I think are important. Will this get followed up? Yes. Were there irregularities? Yes. Are there always irregularities? Yes. All right. So let me just get into this with that idea. All right. So let's first touch on the you bums in the legislature aren't doing anything. All right. And by the way, I will address a couple of national pundits who have said, Dick Morris and Mark Levin, who have made comments about what we in Michigan as legislature and other states legislators should be doing. I'll get to that in a bit, so stand by. It's in my notes. All right. Speaker Chatfield and Senate Majority Leader Shirkey today announced that the Senate and House Oversight Committees will be meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m. Not next week, not next month, tomorrow at 11 a.m. You people aren't doing nothing. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, the Senate and House Oversight Committees will be meeting. And they will hold a hearing tomorrow to begin investigating the handling of the election and any irregularities. Speaker Chatfield said accountability, they will be looking at the accountability in the election and counting procedures for this election and future elections. All right? And one of the things I want you to remember here as we go through this, elections have consequences, right? One of the big issues with where we're at right now is the potential of mail-in ballot voter fraud, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, the people of Michigan voted it in 2 years ago. It is the law of the land, not set by the legislature, set by the people of the state of Michigan, right? Elections have consequences. So we have to deal with this. They ain't pretty, but we have to deal with it. So, first off, the legislature, you aren't doing nothing. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., the oversight committees will begin hearings looking into this. So, I'm not on either one of those committees. I'm on the COVID oversight, but not the Senate and House oversight, okay? So, let's talk about that. Some of the issues. Now, I've talked to legal experts and election experts, clerks and things. So, it's where we're getting some of this information. And there's a lot. For every one of these that I'm going to address, there's probably 100 others that people have heard. Wow, my cousin Vinny told me that. This, I can't touch on all, but here are some of the biggies that have been out there. The Sharpie situation. The story is that some counties used Sharpies or precincts used Sharpies that bled through, and probably something happened where the ballot was soiled, or somebody got a vote that shouldn't. What I'm told is that if there was a bleed through issue and it did spoil a ballot, the machine would kick it out. So it didn't get counted, or there wasn't a double count, or there wasn't something like that, okay? So the Sharpie issue, the machine should be able to handle that. I guess it's been proven in the past. So we move forward. And much of the problem is in the Detroit area. Biggest population, most votes. Were Republican poll challengers prohibited from observing counts at the TCF Center? Not entirely. What I'm told is Republican poll challengers were let into the TCF Center. It's been confirmed that both parties had their maximum allowable number of poll watchers. Now, There have been reports that the Detroit police prevented challengers from entering, but at this point, the details aren't clear. Now, let's discuss what is a poll challenger. These are people that each party credentials. Democrats have their people, Republicans, Green Party, Libertarian. They train and credential people as poll watchers. Only poll watchers who are credentialed can get into those things to watch the ballot count. What could be possible, I'm not saying this is what happened, but what could be possible is some citizens, non-credentialed, wanted to get in to watch, and the police turned them away. That's a possibility. Not saying that's what happened, but when things happen, people assume they know what's going on. So there were the proper number of poll watchers at the TCF Center from the Republican Party. Another question. There were thousands of ballots that were delivered in the middle of the night. True. So that means they were fraudulent. No, not necessarily. So Detroit's a bigger town than Lake Ann. So I'm told that ballots were allowed to be presented until 8 p.m. on election night, right? That's the law. They could be mailed back to the clerk. They could be hand-delivered at the precinct. So what more than likely everybody saw was at 8 o'clock, they started going around and collecting them. Detroit's a big city, lots of precincts. It took them a while. They delivered them to the TCF Center, which is where all the ballots, the write-in ballots and things were calculated. So that's what appears people were seeing. It wasn't that it was just they were sneaking in a bunch of other ballots. So that's part of this. Also, let me make sure I got my notes here. Recounts. I'm going to get into this a little bit too, but why doesn't this legislature, why doesn't so-and-so demand a recount? Well, by state law, and these next couple items are interesting, I think. By state law, the only person who can, or only entity that can demand a recount is an aggrieved candidate. In this case, one would argue President Trump. But if you remember back in 2016 when it was a close election, the Green Party candidate, I don't remember her name, I apologize, asked for a recount. And the court said, nah, you're so far behind, you're really not aggrieved. You lost. A recount's not going to change anything, so they stopped it. So only the aggrieved candidate or their party can ask for that situation. So we'll see what happens. The legislature, as I understand it, by law, can't just demand it. So that brings me back to Mark Levin and Dick Morris, because I've been hearing a lot about those guys. Basically what they said was that legislature in Michigan and 5 other states, the 4 other states, need to take back the counting process because they are the ones who ultimately decide who the electors to the electoral college are. So why they need to take it back. So once those talking heads said that, all hell broke loose from citizens calling myself and my colleagues everything, but a nice name. You sons of guns better do this because Mark Levin said so. So I asked, where do we stand? Well, Mark Levin and Dick Morris aren't technically wrong. That the Constitution does say each state, because remember, states' rights, so everybody can do it a little bit differently. Constitution says a state legislature sets who is the electoral college. In Michigan, see, this is the thing. When you make a broad statement like these 2 guys did, they don't necessarily know how each state does it. And I'll be honest with you, neither did I till I asked. So the Electoral College, back in 1954, our state passed a law that said, okay, here's how we are going to appropriate our Electoral College votes. In Michigan, it's what, 16? The winner of the popular vote gets all of our electoral college votes. The party of the winning presidential candidate gets to choose those electoral voters. So if a Democrat wins, the Democrats get it. If a Republican wins, the Republican gets it. The Republican Party chooses them. If we have an unfaithful voter, that's President A wins, and the party sets up their voters, and I'm one of them, and I choose to vote for the candidate of Party B, I am now officially resigned by state law, and my vote doesn't count. So we, as a state legislature, back in 1954, set that as law, and that's how we've done it all these years. All right? Now, you need to change it. Well, guess what? We can't change it on the snap of a fingers. Why? Because it's a law. That's where it is. And so we can't just say, well, screw that. We're going to change that right now. Why? Because we'd have to create a bill, we'd have to pass it, and then guess what? The governor would have to sign it. And you can't just do that lickety-split. So this is where we're at. And I totally understand people's frustration, their anxiety, and again, tomorrow at 11 a.m., the House and Senate Oversight Committees will be convening to look for accountability in our election counting and procedures. The Secretary of State and the Detroit City Clerk's Office will be directed to preserve all election records so that this can be checked into. This is very frustrating. I understand everybody's concern, but not every hiccup is Snidely Whiplash waiting to tie Nell to the train tracks. Now, I've probably just aged myself there. But you know what I'm trying to say. People are looking into it, and much of what happened, I'm going to guess, was not fraud. It was just those hiccups. That doesn't mean I've just done this to the possibility of any. I'm not. I'm just trying, once again, to calm everybody down. All right? I know it's important. We're moving forward. There's several things that happened on the COVID front I'm not even going to get into tonight. They'll keep. But there's a lot going on out there. And, you know, it's interesting. Presidential elections are that's always when the highest vote's out. And let's talk for just a minute about the electorate, us, the people who go out and vote. So many school millages go by, so many small local elections go by, and we get 20% turnout. And that's a shame. Hopefully, people will learn how important voting is. And I know many do. Please don't, Jack, I know it is. You're a moron for saying it. You know what I'm saying? Here's the thing that I noticed about this election, just to give you an idea of where people's heads are at generally when it comes to voting. I was looking, and remember I said elections have consequences. I'm thrilled that the State House has stayed in Republican hands, and we have majority. That is allowing, I think, a good situation for the deals with the governor. But where do all disputes end up? In the courts. That's the way it is. And like we saw with the 1945 law, where do they work their way up to? The Supreme Court. I don't know if you really know, some of you do, some don't. Our Supreme Court justices are on a nonpartisan ballot. It doesn't say Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or Green Party. But they are chosen by their parties. So, Justice McCormick, Chief Justice, she was chosen by the Democrats to be on the ballot. I don't remember all the names now off the top of my head as we're chatting here. But the Republicans had nominees on there, the Green Party, everybody. So, even though they're nonpartisan, they're selected by parties, right? And that would mean maybe a little more liberal, a little more conservative, a little more whatever. And obviously that would play into potential rulings down the road, right? So I was looking at the numbers of this year, and this is just my research, so my numbers might not be 100% right, but for this discussion, I think it'll make sense. In the Senate race, Peters, James, 5.5 million votes cast. It's a lot of votes. For the Supreme Court justices, there are 2 votes in essence. You could vote for no more than 2. So let's assume everybody voted for 2. Some maybe only 1, but 2. 7 million ballots or votes cast in the Supreme Court race. So that would mean roughly 3.5 million voted for Supreme Court justices. 5.5 million for Senate, U.S. Senate, 3.5 for Supreme Court justice. 2 million less people voted for Supreme Court justice. Why? Because oftentimes in presidential elections, people vote top of the ticket and then they're gone. They don't flip the ballot over or whatever. That's why you need to be a focused voter, and elections have consequences. So 2 million less people voted for Supreme Court justice, and they're as important as anybody else in this chain of command, right? And just for the sake of this discussion, Judge McCormick, who was nominated by the Democrats, and again, I'm blanking here, I should have written the name down. The other winner was also from the Democratic Party, nominated by the Democratic Party. So, see what I'm saying? It's the way the people voted. I'm not arguing it. It's the way it is. My point is, though, 2 million less people voted there. We are dealing with an election system right now that was voted on in many ways by the people 2 years ago with the ballot proposal. It wasn't the legislature, it was the people. So we're dealing with this, and I think we're dealing with it as best we can. President Trump and his legal team and the Republican Party, if they feel aggrieved by Michigan law, they're doing what they need to do. I understand, once again, and this is going long, so I don't want to continue too much longer. I think you get the idea. But moving forward, we understand people's emotion. I'm with you. Nobody wants to feel that they get something stolen from them. But we're moving forward, and the process is there, and whatever happens, happens. But again, when my phone bank, my voicemail in the office is full because people are, you got to do this, you got to do that. We are doing what we legally can as a legislature. And there might be some national pundit who has got you fired up, but state law trumps pundit. All right? So I'm just trying to keep you informed as to where we're at, trying to dispel as many rumors as I can. I don't know every last detail, but that's where we're at. And again, just so you know that tomorrow the Senate and House oversight committees will be meeting, I believe it's at 11 a.m., to begin the process of investigating the handling of the election and any irregularities. So we are moving forward. This is an unfortunate time, but it happened. Those of you who remember hanging chads know that this happens from time to time. So we will move forward and we'll see how it all plays out. But please understand that everybody who can is doing the best they can. You might not think so, but I'm telling you, they are, from where I see it and where I stand. All right? I say this all the time. I will say it again. I am praying for all our leaders. I'm praying for this nation. I'm a believer in the power of prayer. So I'm going to continue to pray that we can come together and that we can, however this plays out, we can move forward. And I know we will. But right now, there is a lot of anxiety and animosity because everybody was invested in this. I get it. I do. And I want you to know that so do your elected officials. We're not just, like, hey, who's playing at 2 o'clock? Yeah, we're in it. We've heard your voicemails. We've read your emails. We've seen your Facebook posts. We hear you. Okay? Know that we do. So with that, I'm going to say good night. If something happens over the weekend that I think I can weigh in on and give you my 2 cents, I will. But please, everybody take a breath. People are aware of the situation, okay? It's not like, what? What happened? All right? We're aware. We heard you. And we're moving this forward as we legally can. Okay? Enjoy the nice weather as best you can.